right, thank you
that,
very
right?
much.
Yeah.
Thank you, George.
I think we got everybody.
for running around doing that for us. Thank you. So that's going to support the range view effort. Hopefully that'll get them kicked off, Lyndon, and we'll go from there. Kimberly is manning the ship for us over here on Zoom. Any?
Are you gonna have Diana go?
Yeah.
Diana, go ahead and let her rip.
Okay, beautiful. So thank you so much, Phil, for giving me this opportunity to come and talk to all of my friends at the Aurora Rotary Club about the $1,500 Rotary Has a Dream Diversity Award that my club is awarding this year. It's my understanding that this is the largest award that is being presented in District 5450 this year. I want to share two things with you. I want to share the what and the why. I'm going to share the why first because that's probably more important than the what. So I have over 15 years of cumulative experience working in Rotary clubs, 7 of which I spent right there with you guys. I rang the Salvation Army bell with many of you. I chaired your dictionary project, and you guys even gave me a Pioneer Award for working on your State of the City. I say all of that to tell you that I'm not the type to station and not do anything. When I went to the Rotary Club of Centennial, I did the same thing. I jumped in with both feet, and I believe that my values represent that of Rotary. And I share the theme of service above self. So on July 1st, when I became the first African-American president in the history of my club's 20 years, I thought that I knew how they would respond to issues of diversity. But I wanted to clarify, so I tried to ask people, what does that look like for you? And what I heard was, don't worry about it. We don't see color, we're colorblind. I'm sure we've heard that before. However, we didn't have any real in-depth conversations around what being the first African-American president would mean for both me and my club. With the first 3 words that I spoke, though, in my inaugural address, I knew that our expectations did not align. Does anyone have any idea what those 3 words were? All right, I'm not going to torture you. In some clubs, they say, oh, maybe it was Black Lives Matter. Close. First 3 words I said was, I can't breathe. Those 3 words became a game changer in my club. And I quickly learned that I had underestimated the challenge that was in front of me. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. I'm your peach princess. I'm your flower power queen. I'm your state of the city champion. And I later came to realize that I had assumed that they had assumed that I would share their worldview and that I wouldn't stir the pot, so to speak. I wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. Because of that misunderstanding, it was a year of challenges that we've had to struggle and work our way through. However, we've risen above them, and each of us, I've learned from them, they've learned from me. At the 6-month period in my tenure, I decided I wanted to give meaning to my year. And so I decided to create this award to help other clubs understand some of the challenges around diversity. So with a $1,000 contribution of my own funds and a $1,000 match from my club, we've created the Rotary Has a Dream Diversity Award. There are 2 things about this award that make it unique in Rotary. The first one is that most awards are given for activities that you have done in the past. They're backward looking. This award is to recognize and financially compensate clubs for what they can do in the future. So we want clubs to have an honest and courageous conversation among themselves about what diversity looks like. So come up with an initiative, a program, a project that can be accomplished over a 12-month period, and then present that to the nomination committee. The second different thing about this award is that most awards are given to clubs for what they've done to help others. This award is given to help clubs help themselves. So I recognize that Rotarians are people of action, but I know that you guys are also people of immense creativity and imagination. And my hope is that you'll use your creativity and imagination to design something that will promote the cause of diversity in your club over the next 12 months. The application is available on the district website, and it's also available on the Rotary Club of Centennial website. With that, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Questions, anybody?
Doesn't look like there's.
Doesn't look like
It's my sincere hope that you guys will apply for this award. I really believe that it will start conversations in Rotary clubs around the issue of diversity. So if there are no questions, I bid you all adieu.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank
Can I
you.
just make a comment?
Thank you. Of course,
Oh,
please.
okay.
Regina.
Diana, as you know, I was the first African-American elected president for Aurora Rotary in a very long history. And also as the chair for the diversity, equity, and inclusion for the district. I want to applaud your efforts and your club efforts and thank you for that. And thank you, on a district level. Thank you for your support of what we're trying to accomplish as a whole in Rotary. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all the good work that you're doing as well. Thanks so much, guys.
All right. Can everybody hear me? All right. You good? Okay. Let's see here. Hold on, give me a second, guys. All right, I'm going to have Kevin Hogan introduce our speaker today. I never go to Dry Dock unless I'm thirsty. And as you can tell, I'm thirsty a lot. So anyway, and we'll go from there.
Stand right here.
Yeah, you can. They'll see you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, great. Great to see everybody today. It's my pleasure to truly introduce our speaker, Kevin DeLange, today. I don't have a script, but just a little bit of memory. I've had a chance to work with Kevin for many years in our community. When you really want to look at a true entrepreneur, young man that came out of his native state of Iowa, coming out to Aurora, Colorado, and starting up a little brew pub program to really do your own beer at home. And I think from that kit, he developed one of the best breweries that we have in not only Colorado, but the Western United States. And he opened up Dry Dock. So he has a facility on Hampton not that far from Parker Road. And then he has a new plant and a new facility that he actually will talk a little bit about what he's doing to produce some of the best beer, not only in Colorado, but the Western United States. So his partner, Michelle, and him came out and truly are what I say, not only a business entrepreneur, but somebody that gives back to the community. So philanthropically, he's probably given more beer back to the community than anybody. And they do that for fundraisers for a lot of our nonprofits. So with a little bit more, Kevin DeLange is going to talk a little bit about the entrepreneur that he is, starting a business, and a little bit about Dry Dock on the fabulous success he's had. So Kevin DeLange, a little warm up together.
Thank you, everyone, for having me back out. I think it's been 4 or 5 years. I think we were at that great steak place Summit years ago. Didn't the Rotary used to meet at the Summit? Oh, whoops. It's been 5, 6 years. Sorry about that. On that note, thank you for the introduction, Kevin. So I'm Kevin DeLange, and as he mentioned, my business partner is Michelle Redding. The two of us own Dry Dock Brewing Company and the Brew Hut here in Aurora. So a little bit about our background. We did grow up in Iowa, as you mentioned. We've been divorced for about 8-9 years, but are still great business partners. So just to make that clear, when I say we moved out and no longer together, we moved out to Colorado. We always visited growing up in Iowa, had an aunt and uncle that lived in the Springs, and we always knew as soon as we got out of college, we'd come out here. She was a pension actuary, worked on Colorado Para and state of Alaska and some plans. And I worked briefly in the corporate world and decided I needed to work for myself. Had family members that were entrepreneurs and was a home brewer. And then found out the Brew Hut, which was founded in Aurora in 1985, was for sale in 2002. So we took out a home equity loan, bought this little retail store, one-man shop, no employees, had to close the retail store if we wanted to go on vacation. We started with that in 2002. It's still there next to our original location at the brewery. And then I realized in 2005, I had talked to the original founder and proprietor of the homebrew shop, that he's like, I think you can get a license in Colorado to be a manufacturing license, so you don't have to serve food, and to produce beer, but you can serve it across the bar. And that always stuck with me. And after a couple of years, I was doing the same thing every day, and the business was doing great. And I've always been challenged, what's the next thing? And called Laura Harris, was the director of Liquor Enforcement Division at the time. I think she still might be in charge of marijuana in the state, but she moved on to the marijuana side, and said, can I do this? And I just went to the top, and she called back a couple of days later and said, yeah, you can do it. The biggest challenge was zoning and licensing, because now I'm trying to get a manufacturing license at Hampton and Chambers, Mission Viejo, southeast corner, right down the street, for a retail strip mall space, a manufacturing license. And licensing came back from the city immediately and said, no, you have to be a brew pub. You can't even get this license. And I called the state. She's like, no, we'll call the city and talk to them about it. Keep in mind, we were the very first one to do this in Colorado. So it wasn't just Aurora. And then later on in the story, Aurora helped other municipalities understand the state and city who had purview over this. And then, so the city says, like, all right, I guess you were right. Licensing, everything's fine. I'm not sure if Trevor was there at that time, but he's since been a great friend for us at the city. And then zoning came back and said, no, you're manufacturing. Breweries, M3, manufacturing, heavy industrial. And they showed us the map, and it was basically where Gaylord's at now. Not even our North Dock facility, it's out by the airports, really heavy industrial. That's the only place you can go to be a brewery, because back then breweries were Coors. And so when the city did zoning, it made sense when they made these zoning regulations that that's where this business should be. And then I talked to zoning, I'm like, but you don't understand, it's going to be 850 square feet. And even though the license is manufacturing, I've got this retail space. And that started our great relationship with the city, because First licensing said, okay, we understand. And then zoning comes back and says, here's how we can do it. You're an accessory to retail because my retail space is 1,200 square feet and your manufacturing zone 800. So we'll call you accessory to retail. And you can open up this little manufacturing facility and a tasting room. Then we got lucky and started to win a bunch of awards. And then next step, this is going a completely different direction than I meant to go. But after Kevin's introduction, I think this is a more appropriate story. Then the next step is Stephen Rodriguez comes back from the city with zoning. And he says, we need to change zoning laws. And I said, why? I'm fine. He's like, you aren't going to be fined in 4 years. He in the city already saw what our potential was, Michelle and I's potential was before we saw it. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Let me know what you need me to do. And he's like, well, do you have any other breweries? So this is 3 or 4 years after we've been open. Do you have any other breweries who have worked with their municipalities to change their zoning regulations? And Boulder had been working on it. I forget another municipality I put them in touch with, but so on our behalf and the industry's behalf in general, the city of Aurora zoning and licensing had enough foresight to start working on this, and it took them 1.5 years. And I said, well, what can I do to help out with this? And they said, we'll let you know, but we might not need anything. And mayor's was a big supporter at the time and always had been of the brewery, and city council was very pro-business, and the whole city building seemed to be pro-business, and they really have been for us since then. And so they changed zoning regulations to loosen them up on breweries. And sure enough, about 9 months later, we realized we're self-distributing out of this tiny little space at hand in Chambers. And we're just doing the bombers, the tall bottles you don't see much anymore. This was before cans got crazy with craft beer and everybody was in bottles. And we had 2 sales reps driving around in 2 vans, and we couldn't make enough beer. So we started looking for properties, and sure enough, it was perfect timing. It was before marijuana was legalized and before the last big boom we had on commercial space, especially warehouse space in the Denver metro area. This was 2012. We found the building at Tower and I-70, which is our second location, and zoning regulations had already been changed for us. And so the reason I went this direction, which I wasn't intending, is as Kevin said, we've donated a lot of beer to the city and to the chamber and lots of organizations, but it's been such a great relationship between our businesses and the city themselves and the chamber and so many organizations. And we were even able to, it took a while, but get the city to allow us to provide all their beer for their summer party out at Aurora Reservoir, which unfortunately had to be canceled this year. But eventually they said, you know, we can have beer. There's a lot of regulations. You got to have a wristband, only get 2, make sure they aren't giving them to spouses. But our relationship with the city has been a huge part of our success. Not only the community embracing us, because we embraced the city of Aurora to begin with, and there were no breweries here, but the relationship with the city and the other organizations have been fantastic for us. So, so 2012, we purchased the larger facility and signed on with a distributor that would cover the whole state of Colorado. So that's a 30,000 square foot building where we're making all of our cans and kegs, and we do some of those bottles still just for our whiskey barrel aged 10.5% specialty beers. But for the most part, we're just canning and kegging up at that facility. We were happy it's still in the city of Aurora boundary for sure. And so now we're statewide. We're the largest brewery in Colorado that's still only in Colorado. Most breweries our size are in 10, 12 states. So we're still very proud of that. We have exported to Japan a couple times. There's a little beer bar in Tokyo that's called Dry Dock, and they came out with the Great American Beer Fest and asked us to send them some beer. But other than that, we're just in Colorado, which we're super proud of. I didn't see what time I started talking, so I don't want to go too long. But next thing I was going to talk about is our COVID impact. When we had talked, you had mentioned that perhaps I could shed some light on that. I know it's affected all industries differently. And so I was going to let you know what it's done to the beer industry in general and us in particular. Obviously, as with all of our restaurants, the biggest impact on us financially was shutting down our tasting rooms. Because we do have our larger tasting room is our small facility in Hamden and Chambers, where we have the bar that people can come in and have beers. And so when that got shut down, it was painful. And our bigger facility in Tower and I-70 has the smaller room, and they were also shut down. We were just starting, that's such a large building and on 6 acres. We were just starting to get lots of weddings, corporate events from Gaylord, because it's a really large wide open space. So it was just starting to take off when that happened, and we had to cancel all those events this past summer as well. Obviously, liquor store sales went up for breweries that can package, because people then went to liquor stores because they couldn't go to bars and restaurants. So we were up about 10% last year in liquor and grocery store sales, which is nice, but that was only for breweries that are big enough that they're packaged. So all the other small breweries that are just tasting rooms like we used to be didn't have that avenue. They could do some to go and some delivery sales, but they were even harder hit. If you look at the 222 and Launchpad and some of our other smaller ones in Aurora, let alone around the state. So at least we were able to do some liquor store sales, but our tasting rooms being shut down was the most painful. The other thing is our restaurant partners and bars and restaurants. We had 300 big kegs in our warehouse. There were 400 at our distributor's warehouse. And all of a sudden was it March 16th or today, or it was just right around here last year, everybody shut down, and we didn't put beer in a keg for probably 4 months, 5 months after that. And all the beer in those kegs is going bad. And it takes our shelf life on keg beers about 4 or 5 months. But to make sure we have enough, and with the cyclical situation, it'll be in our house for 3 or 4 weeks. It'd be at the distributor's building, not too far from us up on I-70. It'll be there for 3 or 4 weeks. Then it's at the retailer, at the bar and restaurant for a few weeks. It's still being fresh to consumers, but now the restaurants have beer going bad. Distributor, ours was the freshest, but we had to eventually dump about 500 kegs of beer. So that was unfortunate. And some of it, we would taste it regularly, because some of it is like, okay, we say 4 months, but this isn't a can where it says expired on it, right? It's a keg. So some of it, we would change the tag out and say, this is still going to be good for another couple months and limp by. And then as soon as it wasn't okay anymore, we'd bring it all back into our place before we would dump it. So that was one of the biggest difficulties. And that part of our business is still down 40%, which is a little surprising to me, because they're starting to open up more. And that's not just us, but our distributor says the same thing. Bars, restaurants, hotels. We have a great relationship with Gaylord. That hurt bad. They used to sell a lot of our beer. But on premise, it's called, where you consume the alcohol on premise, is still down 40% than it was a year ago. Although now we're comparing COVID years to other years, but that business is still down about 40%. Liquor stores have been up about 10% consistently for us since this happened. And the one thing we didn't expect is the home brewing industry, people that make beer and wine at home, has steadily been declining over the past 6-8 years, because there's such a proliferation of craft beer, and you can get some weird chocolate peanut butter banana thing at our place, and so you don't have to make it at home like you used to have to. And so that had just been steadily declining, and we're up 25% the last year, because as soon as everybody got shut down, they picked up hobbies again. I started making sourdough bread on top of the beer, and homemade pasta didn't help either. And then all of our home brewers came back, and they got their friends into home brewing. We didn't have to shut that down because the state called us grocery, because we're selling food, something that still turns into food. They consider food beer. We're regulated by the FDA. And so they still consider, even on that side, we talked to the state, and they said homebrew beer and wine making shops could still stay open. We had to limit it to 3 or 5 people in the place at a time, but it skyrocketed. Curbside pickup, they were absolutely slammed. And those people that took the hobby back up again or started it are still doing it. So that was the one aspect of our 2 businesses that actually benefited from COVID. And it's interesting to, as we go through this, to think about some businesses did benefit. But most, it's been very painful for us. And so that's another thing I thought that would be interesting to share with you guys for sure. Last thing on COVID, when I was taking some notes this morning, supply chain stuff in general. The biggest thing, you may have even heard this, it's made national news, cans. Huge can shortage in the United States. Ball Corporation that bought the rights to the Pepsi Center, it's now Ball Arena, is our can supplier. They're based out of Golden. They can't make enough cans. And so we actually had to cancel launches of beers. Our biggest sellers are Apricot Blonde. We almost out of stock for a month, and then we got a little bit more cans from them this late last summer. And the reason is people are going to grocery stores and they make Pepsi cans, they make Coors cans, they make Dry Dock cans, they make all aluminum cans are made, and they have facilities around the world. But everybody bought more cans because they were at home more, whether it's cans of beer, cans of soda. And so there was a huge can shortage. It caused an aluminum shortage, but the biggest thing is they don't have enough plants to make enough cans or labor. They run 24/7 already. And so that's still a huge issue for a lot of breweries. We were barely able to squeak by. And what they're doing this year is they're allocating based on your 2019 production. They'll give us as many cans this year as they did in 2019, which for us will be fine. But there's a lot of breweries that weren't quite big enough. And again, we're small of the big guys, so I don't want to make it sound like we're big, but we're just big enough to have some of these benefits. But we had a direct account with them, and they're supplying us. We get 2 runs a month. It makes 25 pallets. Each pallet's 8,000 cans is what we'll get through the summer. And we've been stockpiling in the winter because they had a little more capacity. So can shortage has affected a lot of breweries, and is continuing to affect a lot of breweries. But from a supply chain standpoint, we've had some other issues, but that's a critical one. And they say it's going to take until beginning of 2023 for them to get new plants online around the country, because people in general are using more aluminum. And you can imagine my frustration when they said we can't make enough cans, and I don't know what it costs to rename the Pepsi Center Ball Arena. I'm like, you could have put that money into another plant. Instead of advertising, their stock almost doubled over this last year. So, but that's one another big impact that we've had was on a supply chain side was just cans, and freight and cardboard. Everybody shopping on Amazon more. Everybody going to grocery. It's just, that's another big one. Our cardboard costs have gone up a lot. Paper costs and cardboard costs are going through the roof. And a lot of that probably is Amazon was already a thing, and people shopping there has already caused lots of economic problems and some benefits, but the amount of cardboard and transportation required to make that machine run is driving up cardboard costs, paper costs, and transportation costs as well. So that's another big impact we had. Again, I didn't see what time it was. I feel like I've been rambling on. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything else you wanted me to talk about, or. Sorry about this. I understand the bars and restaurants. What about your tasting room? Is it bounced back? Our tasting room is bounced back. Great. Yeah, thank you. I meant to say that. Our other than weather, the last 2 weeks, we were supposed to have our big St. Patrick's Day party at South Dock right down the street last Saturday. Hoping it's going to be 58 this Saturday, like they're saying. Our tasting room, with the city allowing us to put a big tent in our parking lot, so we still have to distance tables 6 feet, so our capacity is reduced. But we have a high capacity number, fire code number. So it's all how many tables we can cram. But letting us put that patio out front, we had this last warm streak, we had the huge cold snap, and that warm weather, we had a Friday that was busier than last year before COVID. So our tasting rooms have bounced back, and I think it's people just getting back into the habit of going to bars and restaurants. I think, I don't know how to train or but all of your back and I really they make you feel good to be there. It's really awesome. I don't know what magic is, perfect magic. And my last point, I've been with my wife for 32 years. She drank brown or all by herself for 30 years, but it's the beer you just ran out of.
So she's not happy.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
She gave me a little sip of strength.
And she had the rest. Yeah, exactly. That's great. That reminds me though, the one thing that we've been following the COVID regulations very strictly has been 90% of the people are great. And we'll get some reviews. Remember to stay in front of the camera. We'll get some reviews that are great about that. And then it's interesting that you have some people that are frustrated. And that's fading a lot lately. Another difficult thing is a 5-star program. If you don't know what the city and counties did to institute this 5-star program that provided no benefit, they never allowed any 5-star benefit. Governor said, nope, not until 70% of people over 70. And then we went to blue anyway. Trevor Vaughn, our tax and licensing director of tax and licensing here, was on vacation, came back as soon as Arapahoe County got permission to do it. Each municipality had to enforce it and go inspect. He got back from vacation. He was out for a week, got back on Saturday. He was in our place on Sunday inspecting us, and he and his team and code enforcement people the city put under there to go around and inspect all these businesses, dropping everything, going to all this training. The city's was fantastic. And that was frustrating, not only for the city of Aurora, but also Arapahoe and Douglas and Adams County, and all these municipalities put so much work into it and nothing ever came from it. We had to spend thousands of dollars on our HVAC system to make it work the way they were supposed to, and contact trace all of our customers to get a name and a phone number. Some customers will be annoyed. I don't have to do this at this place. Why do I have to do it here? Because we wanted to be 5-star certified, and then nothing ever came of it. But the city is and Tri-County Health have been under the state, what the state would let them do, work their tails off. In particular, I know more about Arapahoe County. We're in Adams up north, but Arapahoe County in particular, we had webinars with them every week. And I mean, they worked so hard so that the city. Yeah.
You repeat that?
It is the same, and it's one of the few recipes that are still actually mine. So he was asking, we used to have an award for our ESB, and then we renamed it our Amber Ale. It was the very first beer. So we opened October of 2005, and it was a homebrew recipe of mine. And I entered the World Beer Cup in April of 2006. If you're at the tasting room, there's some cool newspaper articles on the way to the bathroom. I won a gold. I couldn't afford, we could only afford to enter 2 beers. It's at the World Beer Cup at the conference in Seattle. Dinner tickets were $150 a piece. I was there with a friend sitting in jeans outside. It's like they were in this big banquet hall, 400 people, and I was in the foyer. We were drinking the beer that they had before the awards started. And we ended up winning a gold medal for that particular beer. So it's still the same one. It's now our Amber Ale. It's the best beer that we make. It's our lowest selling beer because people don't want to buy Ambers, and they don't want to buy. We switched it from ESB to Amber because people didn't like English Special Bitter as a name, and it's so frustrating to me. We need some fake fanciful name, and it probably sell better. Thank you I appreciate that.
It's my favorite beer as well.
Thank you.
You know, pretty young, and how did you get that building financed up at I-70?
I-70 worked because we were making enough money at the other place. So everything was baby steps for us. So home equity loan for, I'm happy to run through this. Home equity loan to purchase the brew hut. It was $80,000 at 2002. I was born in 74. I was like mid-20s, stressed out. So, I mean, luckily we got our first home on a foreclosure, and real estate was going up. So Michelle had a good job. Super stressed out, $80,000. Most of that was inventory to purchase the homebrew shop. And then she supported us home. We didn't have kids together. I told you I just had my first, but we didn't have kids together. So she supported us home. And then we saved up enough money to open up the tiny space, 800 square feet. We opened up for cash for about another $80,000 to $90,000. And things picked up. Our biggest freak out moment, now it used to be a Checker Auto Parts. We're all still in the same space. We just kept taking more over of that strip mall if you've been to our location. But the Checker Auto Parts is now at Hampton and Tower, used to be at Hampton and Chambers. They left and it was 7,000 square feet and the build out for that was 400,000. That's a point. It's like, yes, we can make this in the rest of our lives if we go under, but it's going to suck. But we were making just enough at the other two places. We did that one and that took off immediately, winning some awards. And so we had enough cash flow. And since then, we've expanded a little bit there. We put in a classroom, but since that 2009 expansion, that place has looked basically the same in Hampton and Chambers. And there we had enough cash flow to front the loan on the other building. It was an SBA loan. Because property was involved, I forget if it's 5A or 7B, I always get it mixed up. But when you have property involved, you can get the equipment to build out the property over 25 years. And that building was for lease. It used to be a plumbing supply house. And our monthly outlay with the purchasing the building and all the equipment and build out was less than just the lease rate on that property because it was over 25 years. So SBA for sure. But every step was, and that one was stressful, but it wasn't as stressful as that $400,000 personal guarantee. When you're like, I think people will come because we were already busy. But when you're packed and only can sit 20, you don't know if you're going to get 80 next door or 100 next door. So that was the hardest one up there. But the SBA loan helped, and we were able to do that through KeyBank and SBA at that point. So. And also, real quickly regarding COVID, PPP loan helped us a bunch. We didn't lay off. We had to lay off front of the house staff, bartenders. Most of them were already school teachers, and they had other employment, or but a few of them were full time. Anyone that wanted to come back was able to come back. But that's all we had to lay off. We kept all of our sales guys in the market, even though they couldn't go to bars and restaurants. We were able to keep them all on staff and all the production staff. And thankfully for the PPP loan helped us a bunch on that. So we lost a lot of money last year, but at least it kept everybody employed and kept us, and we're optimistic for the future. Any other questions? All right, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
So Kevin, for coming in, we give everybody that speaks for us one of these challenge points.
Thank you.
It's got the Rotary stuff and then our 4-way test. So,
I've got a little collection of these because challenge coins are
awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Congratulations on the new title.
Yeah.
Little girl and all.
Super cute.
Okay, next time, yeah.
You got a lot of grandpas.
My brother's 2 years older than I am as a grandpa, so 46.
They're talking about his little kid.
All right. Kim, did you have anything that you wanted to share? Yeah. Okay. Run real quick.
Got me? All right. Let's see. Brad Pierce is coming up March 22nd. My wife is today, 17th, St. Patty's Day girl. Paul and Debbie Suss, March 19th anniversary. How many years, buddy? 38 years. And Bob's here today. You and Ruth, March 23rd. How many years? 59. Congratulations, Bob. Max Blair, Rotary anniversary, 2 years, March 18th. Daniel Lamon, 2 years, March 20th. Thank you, Danielle. And then, okay, then we'll be into next week. Anything anybody else needs to share with us? Kevin, pleasure having you, buddy. Thanks for coming in, man. That's good. Yes, Linda.
Just so everybody know, especially Bob Barrows, the mountains, Ryla did get canceled for summer, they're virtual, so I don't know if that looks like it, but we'll cancel.
So Bob, that's Ryla. She made a comment about Ryla. Ryla's been canceled. They're looking at virtual. Okay. Yes. Yeah, that is nice. Having a speaker here with us. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's why you
Hey,
Hey,
Phil.
one other thing, Bill, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this. Bill's gonna have some surgery on Monday, so everybody pray for Bill that he'll get through that safely and recovery will be good. So.
Bob has
Okay.
something.
Hey, Phil.
So you know we collect
Phil, could you,
minus ventures. Happy Bucks was $130. So good job. Bob, go ahead.
I just wondered if maybe in the next meeting, Kimberly might tell us where the exchange student program is.
Hey, Bob, hold on.
I got you. He wanted to know where the youth exchange program is, if I can
Yeah.
update you guys next meeting.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that, Bob. Well, all right, any other comments, questions? Great seeing everybody here today. For those of you on Zoom, we thank you. And
Bye, everyone. I hope you guys have a great week.